I'm Shanique, and I'm your host here every week with Pumpkin Fudge on Wednesdays at noon. And thank you so much for joining me and for being here, whether you're watching live or watching after the fact. We appreciate you and you watching every week, whether we have something that is serious like this subject or something that's super fun and like seasonal. We appreciate it. So thank you so much. And before we get started, I actually want to describe myself for those who are low vision or blind and might be listening with us. I'm a Black woman with a dark ginger, reddish, curly hair right now with a hot pink shirt and glasses with gold hoops. And behind me is a white sign that says Pumpkin Fudge in rainbow letters, and it's on a gray wall, and you can kind of see my window a little bit, but not too much. And yeah, that's me. I think that's really all you can see in my screen. So that's my description. Maybe if you want to describe yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Dumebi Egbuna. To describe myself, I am a Black woman with blonde, kind of long, knotless braids. I have a gray shirt on. I am in my kitchen, and there are dark brown cabinets and a microwave behind me. And that's really all you can see.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for describing yourself. I think I forget sometimes to do it, but I really try to remember. So today we're going to talk about building inclusive workplaces. Dumebi is actually the CMO and co-founder of a platform called Chezi. And today we'll find out exactly what that is. And before we get started, can you tell us about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so hey everyone, again, my name is Dumebi Egbuna. I am based out of Chicago, Illinois. And like Shanique said, I am the co-founder and CMO of Chezi. Outside of working on Chezi, I work at IBM in like a sales and business development type of role. So a little more about Chezi. Chezi kind of has two pieces. So the first piece, we are essentially like a glass door for minorities. So we give minorities insight into the minority experience at prospective companies so that they can make more informed career decisions and they can find companies and careers that they love and that they can be successful and be themselves at those companies. And then on the flip side, we help employers or organizations we've created kind of like a software to help them manage and keep track of their employee resource groups or ERGs. If you're not familiar with ERGs, they are essentially mini communities within an organization. So like a lot of people will have like a Black employee resource group or a women's employee resource group or a disability employee resource group. And this is really to help those minority identities kind of find like-minded people to engage with at their respective organizations. So yeah, we are kind of a two-pronged organization, but yeah, it's been fun.
I love that so much because I have to say this because it's super important. This month is actually Disability Pride Month, and it's also Black Mental Health Awareness Month. And it's just a coincidence that we actually are doing this today, but both of those things I think fall under the umbrella of what Chezi sort of does, and it's the bigger picture because if you're building inclusive workplaces for employers and also for the employees, that totally will help, people's mental health. And it's a real thing that people can feel completely out of place in the jobs that they're in and the careers. Yeah. They can love something so much and just not find a good fit for themselves. So I love that so much, and I love what Chezi is doing, and just to find out about it and to have you here. Thank you again. I've told you that already.
Of course.
I appreciate it so much, and it means a lot to me as a Black person who has found a place for myself that I feel extremely comfortable in, and I'm thankful for that. So can you tell us why and how the name Chezi came about, and how the company in general came about? Like, why did you start it?
Yeah, to kind of give us some background on like why we started Chezi. Again, I work at IBM, which is like a 400,000 person company. My brother works at a large consulting company. So we have a lot of experience being like the only minorities in a room, me being the only Black woman on like a lot of my teams, being the only Black woman at like several of the conferences I was attending, being the only Black woman in a lot of these spaces. And I didn't always feel like I belonged in these spaces. I dealt with like imposter syndrome. I dealt with, the different microaggressions that just come with being a minority in the workplace. And I started talking about these experiences with my brother, and he was experiencing similar things as a Black man in that space. And we were like, there's really no place for you to find out what it's like to be a minority unless you go find a minority at a company that you're interested in, and then you have like an informational interview or you sit down with them for coffee. But the issue with that is that like not a lot of minorities don't have the social capital to do that. A lot of minorities, they might be like first generation corporate America, or like they just don't have people within their network that have worked in the corporate space. So we decided to start Chezi. And again, it's like a glass door for minorities. So we collect stories from different minorities, and then on the back end, a job seeker can filter those stories by people who identify similarly to them. So as a Black woman job seeker, I could go on and filter the reviews for other Black women and kind of find out what their experiences were like at companies that they're interested in. We chose the name Chezi because we are Nigerian, and Chezi in our language, Igbo, means reflect. And, even with the story process, it's a lot of people reflecting on their own experiences as a minority, or from a company perspective, it's a lot of companies reflecting on what they could be doing better to improve, inclusion and equity at their organization. So I think it was just kind of like an all around, perfect kind of term for us.
Yeah, it sort of gave me chills just now. Like, I read it already, but to have you explain it to our audience, I think it just is a full circle moment to know that it means reflect. Like, that's a great choice of a word to use to name a company that has the mission that you have. So I love that.
Thank you.
And your mission is actually to help underrepresented students and professionals. Well, one piece of the company is to help find careers that, bless you, find careers that they love. Why? And we talked a little bit about this just now, but why is that important, especially in this day and age of 2021?
Because belonging.
That's a loaded question.
No, belonging and inclusion is so important, especially right now, because like people want to be able to show up to their company and to their workplace and feel like they don't have to cover themselves. And when I say cover, I mean like they can be their full authentic self. They can wear their natural hair in the workplace. They can, talk how they want to, especially in like the Black community. Code switching is a big, conversation.
Yes, let's talk about it. I just posted something about this the other day.
Let's turn on our white voice and like act professional, but like we don't. Professional in corporate America is through like a white lens, and somehow like Black culture and Black influence has been deemed unprofessional. So like you want to show up in a workplace where like that's not the case. You can just be yourself. I can talk how I want to talk. I can dress how I want to talk. In context, like obviously I'm not going to wear a t-shirt and shorts to work.
Of course, yeah.
Express yourself, whether that be like through colors or through different styles or like whatever it may be. So yeah, and I think that is just something that has been at the forefront of a lot of minorities' minds, especially within the last couple of years as DEI has become more of like a greater subject. Sorry, I don't even know what the question was.
No, you answered it.
Okay, good. So yeah,
it's a lot. And I just, as I heard you speak, I thought about my own experience. I mean, over the years here at Pumpkin Fest, like there's been little things that have happened where I really have to stand back and like thank, the universe, God, for this, place that I've found where I can fully be myself. Like there was a time that I asked our founder Lisa, and I don't know if she's watching this, I think she's in a meeting, but I asked our founder Lisa if she wanted me to like pull my hair back. She wanted me to take my nose ring out because I had like a hoop. And I didn't know why I had asked that at the time, but we were actually doing something on live television. Like it was kind of a big thing. So I didn't want to like make her look bad or anything. And she like was so shocked that I would even ask that. She's like, no, like, I want you to be yourself. I want you to be who you are. And like, she told me even after that, like, don't ever ask if you have to do that, because no, like, I want you to be yourself. So that's so important that like people are able to find that, because that's so seldom nowadays to be accepted as yourself. So
yeah, and it's like it's just frustrating that sometimes we even have to think about like, do I need to take my nose ring out? Or like, I also have a nose ring, and I've also thought about that. Or like, there was one point where I was like, should I even get braids? Because like, who knows what that'll look like when you're interacting with, you know, people who might not be familiar with Black people or Black women in particular, and our hairstyles and our hair types. So yeah, it's so important. So that's kind of why we wanted to create this company, is just like, we want people to find those companies where they don't have to think about that. Like, all of that stuff is like, just show up as you know?
But what, like, it also makes me think, like, what are the repercussions of that? Like, if you go into a place that is not ready for all that you come with, or all that, you know, that entails for you to come in exactly the way that you are. And a lot of people are on the tail end of that, where they get embarrassed, or, you know, they get pointed out, or they get told to leave, or they get asked to change their hair. I mean, that's a perfect segue into one of the questions. It was further down in the list, but, you know, 13 states have just passed something called the Crown Act, and I just found out about this, perfect for this conversation. And what do you feel about that? Like, how do you think that fits in building an inclusive workplace?
Yeah, I think this is specifically important for Black women. And Black women already have so many stereotypes that they're battling against, like any presence of like an attitude, or, you know, or you standing up for yourself, you're like the angry Black woman, or any presence of you like just kind of showing up like you're deemed ghetto, or like whatever it may be. And hair is such a big thing too. Like, people just aren't familiar with our hair types, our big curly fros, like everything. And we've been discriminated against because of that. Like, it's been deemed unprofessional. We've been deemed as like unkempt. So like the fact that this is starting to make a wave and it's being more normalized, and Black women are able to express themselves how they want to express themselves, because this is the hair that God gave us. This is the hair that's growing out of our heads.
Hello.
Yeah. So it's really exciting. And I think we've seen the natural hair movement take off in the last couple of years. Like, Black girls are like, I don't want to do a relaxer anymore. Like, I'm just going to, you know, go with what, you know, what God gave me. And the fact that like employers are starting to embrace that and being like, show up as you, I think is really exciting.
Yeah, same for me. I mean, it's the best decision that I ever made.
Yeah.
There's like doing the best that it can ever be, because at one point it was just bad, but I'm so glad that I have embraced my natural hair.
Yeah, no, I am too. It's a lot of maintenance, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. So can you tell me, so for employers and both employees as well, what types of services does Chezi offer?
Yeah. So for the employees, it's really all about the story piece that I mentioned. So it's, you know, collecting these stories from different minorities at these different companies, so that job seekers can find, you know, information or insight into the minority experience on our platform, and not really have to go outside of their networks, or like try and do this like whole corporate game of talking to the right people. Like, right here on our platform, you can read these stories, you can get this insight, and you can kind of decide where you even want to apply. You know, like if you see that there are a lot of negative reviews, which thankfully we honestly haven't gotten that many negative reviews for any company, but you know, if you see a couple negative reviews, especially coming from people who identify similarly to you, you're not likely to be like, okay, that's actually a company that I want to work for. So it saves, you know.
You know, I just connected the dots that's what the stories are for. So people can actually read them and like get like a preface into a company before they actually go, wow.
We also just like offer this kind of outlet to minority employees who might not have a voice at their company, or like might not have someone to go talk to if they felt like a microaggression, or if there's something that could be improved.
Yeah.
We have that kind of outlet for them to be able to sit down and really reflect on their experiences and like let it out and help out another minority coming through. So that's kind of our offering or our service for employees. And then, like I said, on the employer side, we are working on a software to help them track and manage their employee resource groups. That is really where a lot of that like $50K from that grant went from, is like developing that. And we have a couple companies on board already. So just hoping to continue that.
I was just going to ask you about that. So people may not know that you actually just won the grant. So can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, I don't have a question here, but I think that's like so big for you to get that grant to work towards the things that you want to see for Chezi in the next 5 years or 2 years or even less than that.
Yeah, it was really exciting. So my brother, who is my co-founder, he was accepted into the NPR How I Built This fellowship. And if you're not familiar with, How I Built This, it's like a podcast hosted by Guy Raz. And he talks to like all of these big time founders, like the founder of Airbnb or the founder of ClassPass or whoever it may be, and just like talks to them about their stories. And he created this fellowship to help, first time entrepreneurs just kind of solidify what their offering is, mentor them, kind of give them a nice, foundation. So Toby was a part of that. And then at the end of I think it was a 6-week program, there was a pitch competition where you just pitch your idea to a group of judges, and the prize was $50K, and Toby ended up winning. So we've been using.
Yay! Shout out to Toby. I wish he could have been here today, but
yeah,
I love like siblings. I have 4 of them. So
yeah, we have a big family as well. I have 3 siblings, but Toby and I have been working on this project together, and it's been so fun. So yeah, we're using that $50K to, do a lot of the software development. Toby is trying to transition to full-time. So he's using some of the money to help him do that, pay for expenses, but it's been good.
I love that. And how is it working with your brother? Do you guys bump heads sometimes? Do you feel like?
No, I honestly think that we balance each other out really well. Like Toby is definitely like an operational guy. Like he likes to, have an idea and he'll like to execute on it, which is great. And I sometimes need that push, but I think I am better at like giving us grace and kind of just reflecting on like how far we've come and like kind of settling him down sometimes, because he can be like, we're not moving fast enough. We're not doing blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, these things take time. Rome wasn't built in a day. This isn't going to be built in a day. But there are some things that we can be doing in the meantime while this is like kind of working itself out. So I think we are a good team.
So maybe I need a friend like you. I'm the same way. Seriously, I'm like, it's not happening fast enough for me. I want it now. I think it's because I'm a millennial.
No, I mean, I feel that too. And like, sometimes I struggle with that, but I think I'm just like, I've learned over the years that things will, usually work themselves out. And there's no point in getting so worked up over something that like you really have no control over, especially like if it's like a sales cycle and it's like, you're really waiting for like a company to decide on if they want to pursue whatever you're offering, or like some of the tech development stuff. It's like not in our hands anymore. It's with the developer. So it's just, I don't know. It's just, let's be patient. I'm sure it'll, work out.
Yeah. And I know that this is a big question. So I debated with myself whether I wanted to ask this, but what does inclusion look like to you? I know it can look so many different ways, but to you personally, what does it look like?
Yeah. I mean, one, to me, it'd be like me being able to show up in a space and feel like they accept all of me. So like whether I'm wearing my hair in these long braids or like in my like curly afro, whatever, I can dress how I want, and I'm accepted that way. Like there is no judgment passed. There is no, like you need to fit into this box in order to work here. It's that, to me, it's also like having a sense of community at whatever organization. Like I realize not everyone in an organization is going to look like me, but I need a space where I can be with people who look like me. So for me, that would be like ERG programs. That would be mentorship programs where I'm looking at people who are succeeding in their careers and they also look like me. So I can also see that I have a place here and like my career can be furthered at this organization, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
To me, it's also about numbers. So like, I want to see that people at my level look like me, but also people in leadership look like me. And I like, unfortunately, a lot of these companies, they all have better representation numbers at like lower level positions, but as you climb the ladder, a lot of that representation falls off. So to me, it's like either you weren't developing the minority talent that you have, or you didn't recognize that they were talented and you weren't giving them the same opportunities for development, like whatever it may have been. But I want to see that representation doesn't fall off and that you have things in place to help foster representation as it goes up the ladder, if that makes sense.
So in the recent like race conversations that have been happening in like the mainstream community, something kind of good that came out of that, I think for me, like watching social media, I saw influencer Jackie Aina. I'm sure that you've heard of her because she's amazing and she's doing great things as, a Black influencer. And she started with another person, pull up.
Yeah, they were one of our partners for a while.
I love that. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, they are doing amazing work. Yeah.
I enjoyed seeing like all of the companies like really be honest about their numbers, and it was unfortunate, but I think that it fostered a lot of change in a lot of the companies that had low numbers at the higher level. Just like you said, like I think that's so important to not see us always like in smaller levels. I think we need to be at the higher levels so that more opportunities can happen for us.
Yeah.
At every level. If we're up high, then we're the ones making the decision, and we're the ones seeing, other people who look like us. So yeah, that's a great point. I love that you said that. And it made me think about the Pull Up for Change initiative that was happening. I think it still is, but it's
still going on. I think they're trying to like organize now, because like whenever it was happening during last summer, it was kind of like an impromptu just call for action, call for change, and now it's trying to like organize and be like a formal kind of nonprofit. But yeah, they're doing really good work.
And back to you, like, did you always know that you'd be an entrepreneur, like that you would start a business?
No, honestly, even in college, I was like, I'm sure I'm just going to end up in corporate America and just like try and climb the corporate ladder. Cause like, I feel like I could be actually a really good executive. I want to be a manager of people.
You should think that.
I love like delegating. Like, I think I could be a good manager, get to that executive level. I have a good like strategy mind. I think that could have worked out for me. But no, entrepreneurship wasn't really on my agenda. Like, I think if anything, I would have been like, when I had the money to do so, I probably would have opened like my own like clothing boutique or something. Cause I really love like fashion. I really love clothes. I really love shoes, all that stuff.
If people follow you on Instagram, they would know that. you have all the looks. And for me personally, I'm like, okay, like, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's like, I thought maybe like I'd go through, the corporate America thing, do it for a while, climb the ladder, and then pursue like a passion project, whether it be like the fashion thing or like interior design or something. But, talking to Toby and like getting this off the ground, I'm like, I could really see this being something that I do. I really love, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think it's important. I think I have a good perspective being a Black woman and kind of like having that like intersectional identity. So this has worked out, but like if I had to do like something else, I'd probably be like striving for a CEO spot or something.
That's so funny that you said that. See, you're so good at this. I just was about to ask, like, that's one of our questions. How do you balance intersectionality? That's such a big word that I've recently learned, like in the last year. How does it play in your life? How do you balance it personally and professionally? And do you find well, I'll ask you the first part first, and then I'll ask the second part.
First things first, I love being a Black woman. Like, I wouldn't want to be anything else. I just
Me too, girl. Yeah, me too.
Something so magical about Black women, and just like how we always hype each other up, how like sisterhood is such an important part of like our identities, and like finding another Black woman like just randomly on the street. Like, I just love that connection that we automatically feel. So one, there's that, like just being Black, which is awesome. Like our culture, it like, you know, Black culture kind of runs the world to me. And being a woman, like, love that part of me as well. So like just, yeah, like I don't even know how in my life, I mean, again, I love it, but you know, we do face the racism that comes with being Black, and we do face like the misogyny and the sexism that comes with being a woman. So like sometimes that can be hard, especially in the workplace where people, you know, like I think a lot of the microaggressions that you face come with like your Black womanhood. So like that can be difficult, but again, like I wouldn't change it for the world. I think if there's something so special, and I think people recognize like how magical Black women are, especially when you're doing well in corporate America. I think people take notice because like for some reason they think that like we wouldn't be doing well, and then like once they see that like you're actually like on your shit, like there's something that people like pay attention to.
Yeah.
So
I think you're on the money with that, and it's unfortunate that that's the first thought that some people have, but there's a lot of things that are changing, I think, in that entire thing. And it's not just a trend. I think that's so important for us to think about, and for us to remember that worrying about just where your company is in terms of hiring Black people, accepting Black people, making more inclusive workplaces is not just a trend. It's not just important because it's happening right now. It's always been important.
Right.
Unfortunately, it hasn't been, you know, a mainstream issue until now, but you have to take things, I think, as they come. So to see all the changes that are happening, and for me, like intersectionality looks a little different because being a woman, being Black, and being disabled, that's like 3 things already that people are looking at me and saying, okay, like, look at all these odds against her. Now, what is she gonna do with all of that? You know, I feel like people are always looking at women, you know, disabled people, Black women in general, and saying, what are you gonna do with everything that you come with, and how are you gonna make a difference in the world? And it can get really hard for me personally, like to juggle all of those things. Disability awareness is super important to me. Being a woman, being a feminist, that's important to me. Being Black is really important to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's all equally important, I think. So I feel you. It can be.
Yeah, and I think that conversation, what you just said, is so important, because it's like a lot of people obviously looking at people's Black experience, it's like through the Black lens. But like when you look at like womanhood or like the feminist movement, a lot of that has been through a white lens, and it's like white feminism, where like that is centered around white women, and like the women of color struggle is kind of forgotten within that white women lens. And then disability is kind of the same thing. It's like white disabled people, but like you don't understand that, like, you know, people of color who are also disabled like are facing this whole other struggle, you know. So yeah, that was really, because like then you as like the Black woman who is also disabled is like, you have to put it all together and like put it through a Black, like it's really interesting to me, those types of conversations.
Yeah, and then all of the different ways in which you are expected to educate people as well.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I don't mind answering questions, but um, I don't always want to be a source of like
Right.
education and knowledge for everyone when it comes to disability, when it comes to blackness, when it comes to just life as a woman in general. Like, I'm not always willing to be on, you know?
For sure. Yeah. And I think a lot of Black people, especially this last summer where people were just now like, oh shit, like America's racist. A lot of Black people probably felt that way. Is like, I am not here to educate you. I understand that, like, I am your friend, I am Black, but like, there's so many resources that have been available to you for years and years, and like, go out and look, and like, if you want to talk to me about like my personal experience, maybe I'll talk to you about it if I feel comfortable. Like, I'm not pressured into doing it. It's not my obligation, it's not my burden. Like, put that accountability on yourself to like just go out and learn it. Like, don't go to your Black friend and have them teach it to you, because it's not their responsibility.
Yes. I'm going to take that quote and I'm going to just put it somewhere on our page.
Yeah, no, for real.
This was so good. But can you speak to what's the best place for a business to start if they're looking to become more inclusive?
Yeah, I would say, and I know we just got off of like, don't go to your Black friend to educate you, but like, I would say start talking to your minority employees and seeing what their experience is. So whether that be like just an employee satisfaction survey where you're like, have questions that are specifically on the subject of belonging, equity, inclusion, all that stuff, and just seeing where people stand and like making sure you're segmenting that out. So like, how do segment it by race, segment it by, you know, team. So whether that's like marketing, product, whatever, engineering, whatever it may be, segment it by lower level, mid-level, executive leadership, like segment it by the, I guess, rank. You can segment it all types of ways, but just see which mixture of people are feeling a certain type of way, and then you can address it better. You know, like, once you have that kind of foundational feedback, you can see what things you need to implement in order to make a change. But I would say it starts with having conversations with your employees or getting feedback from your employees and seeing what's missing. Because if you're just kind of like throwing things at a wall and seeing what sticks, can be as productive as like hearing it from, you know, your minority employees saying, oh, well, we lack career and development opportunities, or we lack mentorship, or we lack this place isn't accessible to me, so I feel like I can't do my work well. You know, just hearing that from your employees and going from there.
And if you're really listening to a person, then you're trying to find a solution. If someone's telling you that they feel uncomfortable, or something feels inaccessible, or they don't feel included, or they don't feel heard, and you're just ignoring what they're saying or not trying to find a solution, then you're not making a safe space for them to continue to come to you with these problems. And
that's the big thing too, is just like, a lot of companies tout like, oh yeah, we are such an open place, come talk to me about whatever. But that means having those harder conversations, and there not being any like disciplinary action. There not being, you know, someone nervous that they might get fired if they say like, oh, this person was like mistreating me or whatever. You know, like it comes with like full transparency and full openness, and like just like letting your employees know that there is no discipline or repercussion for you coming up and speaking up. It's like, really, we are trying to be better. We are trying to be more inclusive. We are trying to make this workplace the best that it can be. And that is only going to happen by us listening to you.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that's a great place to start. I hope that this episode, some employers can see it and just start to work on their the inclusion within their workplace. And if they were interested, like, I know you all have resources that they can check out on the Chezi website. So what types of things can they, like, where can they go? I know it's chezi.co is your website. We can so that they can check out some of the resources that you all have.
Yeah. Yep. So it's chezi.co. You can find us on Instagram at CheziHQ. We're also on LinkedIn at Chezi. And then if it's an employer and they want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us at team@chezi.co. A lot of that contact us information is on our website. So honestly, just head there. You'll see like all the resources that we have, the blogs that we have, and then like any contact information is on our website.
Okay, I'm putting that in here. And this is your LinkedIn, and the email we're gonna put up in a second as well. But I do have one more question.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa wanted to know, she's not here right now, but she wanted to know, what are some blind spots?
Sorry. Chezi is spelled Chezie.
That's my house. My bad, y'all.
Perfect.
Okay, so my question was, and Lisa wants to know, what are some blind spots that you find for employers specifically?
Yeah. I think a lot of employers have reached out to us to be like, we want to recruit diverse talent. We want to get more, minorities in the door. And it's like, yeah, I think everyone does, especially after the last year. Everyone's looking at their representation and being like, oh, we don't have a lot of minorities here. And that's great. And that really is great. But like, I think before you even get to recruiting minorities, you need to step back, look at your internal programs, look at the minorities that you do have and see where you're failing them. So whether that means you start to implement like employee resource groups, you start to implement like accessibility training, all these other diversity trainings, you start to implement mentorship, you start to implement there are so many things that you can implement for your internal programs right now to help your minorities that you have right now. And that's so important because like if you're recruiting diverse talent, that's great. Like maybe they'll stay for, a year or 2 years, but as they see that your internal programs aren't there, you're not fostering equity and inclusion. Once they get there, they're going to leave. So like, sure, you can recruit them, but like the retention is going to start, going downhill if you don't have the programs in place to like foster their development and foster their career progression.
That's so big because we see that in a lot of places, like even, I'm thinking of a different example. So say, for instance, if you have 10,000 followers on Instagram and your likes and your comments, your engagement doesn't reflect that, your retention rate is going down because people are not getting what they expected from you. Like you have these followers, the numbers are there, but what are you doing to keep them? And that's what I think about when you just said that. Like, yes, you want a diverse workforce, but what are you doing so that they feel comfortable and they stay there for a long period of time? And are not leaving after a week, 2 weeks, or telling their friends, like, I don't think you should work there, and that's a big thing, word of mouth, like people telling you like, oh, that's not a good place to work.
Right.
You know that.
Or people's big stories, like this place is crazy. So yeah, I think, making sure your internal stuff is in order before you start recruiting people externally.
Yeah. And I just also want to just show people your website one more time and just tell them, like, if you have stories, I would suggest submitting them for people to read them and to learn from your experience and to try to, foster change, because I think that's so necessary. Even if maybe some people may not feel comfortable submitting. Like, is there an option to do it anonymously?
All of our stories are submitted anonymously.
Okay, good to know.
You fill out like your portrait traits, which is like race,
Okay.
gender, age, sexual orientation, disability status, veteran status, but you only have to pick out one. You only have to submit one of those portrait traits. Obviously, we encourage people to submit as many as they're comfortable with, just because it's easier for like job seekers to identify them.
Right.
But at some of these smaller offices, it might not be feasible for you to fill out that out because someone could be like, "Oh, that's Dumebi." So just fill out what you're comfortable filling out, and then submit your story. That'd be awesome.
Yes, and thank you, Dumebi, so much for being here and for doing this with me and having such a necessary conversation, not only today, but just in general. Like, I think that Chezi is so necessary for Black women, for women in general, for adults with disabilities, for those that identify with any minority community out there that we may not have spoken about today. You apply here as well. Like, I think that having a place where we all belong is so important. So Chezi is working on that, and I really appreciate having you here and being able to talk about this and share my own experiences. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was great. Like, I love, having these conversations. Like you said, they're super necessary. So, yeah, I'd love to come back even.
No problem. And thank you all, whether you watch this after the fact or if you watched live, if you jumped in and jumped back out, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for continuing to watch with us week after week. And yeah, we appreciate it. We'll be back next week. So thank you. Thank you, Dumebi. Bye. Have a good night, everyone.